Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Jack Hagel. Political ads. Ads showing legislators in defund the police shirts that they didn't wear. Ads depicting candidates in phony mugshots, even though they weren't arrested. Ads featuring holograms mimicking candidates. Those are just a few things North Carolina voters will see this election season. WRAL state government reporter Paul Specht recently wrote about campaign ad trickery on WRAL.com, and he's here to tell us all about it. Paul, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
The things I just described, those are from real ads this election cycle. What's different about them than, say, ads in previous election cycles?
Well, political ads have been around almost forever, as long as this country has been around. And we've seen people, presidents, candidates at every level make false claims about each other, right? We've also seen cartoons and caricatures and mockery and a lot of these campaign ads and things like that. What's different about these is they are images, they're photos. And instead of attempting to mock someone or tear them down in sort of an obvious way by, taking a photo of them or an unflattering photo and darkening the bags under their eyes or making them look sickly or something like that, these ads are photoshopped in a way to make the trickery look real. The T-shirts that you mentioned look real, even though they were never worn. And that's just one example. I could walk you through a couple others.
Yeah, walk us through a few.
That one is a GOP attack ad.
This is the defund the police one.
That's right. It's actually a conservative group. It's not the Republican Party itself that put out some mail ads targeting Democratic legislators. And they took photos of these legislators and then photoshopped the words "defund the police" on their T-shirts in a way that looks very real. It does not look like a caricature. It looks like a convincing T-shirt, like the T-shirt they're wearing in the photo was designed that way, but they're not. And people on social media quickly picked up on this a couple weeks ago, and thought there was this outcry that, hey, these crossed the line. This is not, it's one thing to claim, perhaps even misleadingly, that Democratic lawmakers want to defund the police, right? It's another to attempt to convince voters that the candidate in question was wearing a shirt that said that. That comes across as more of an embrace. It's less about an interpretation of something they said, and more, just trying to convince them that they are about this. There's no disputing their opinion, when in fact those legislators who are the targets of that ad would dispute the claim that they want to defund the police.
So in a cartoon, you would know straight away that it is indeed a caricature, and that label perhaps drawn on their shirt is clearly not real. But by altering an image to make it look like they are wearing the shirt is more misleading, is what you're saying.
That's right. That's the difference. It's the difference between telling someone, hey, Jack Hagel wants to defund the police, and then showing a picture of him with a shirt that says defund the police and saying, hey, here's proof, when that never actually happened.
I'm sure many of our listeners are wondering, how do they even get away with this?
Well, the First Amendment offers a lot of protections, actually, and there's just not a lot of regulation around this. The simplest way to put it is that someone would need to be defamed in order to have some sort of lawsuit. Well, in order to have a successful case, you would have to prove damages, right? You'd have to prove that a false claim tangibly hurt you. And that's hard to do. You can't just say it hurt my feelings. Those don't go very far. You have to say, oh, well, this particular lie cost me business. Maybe someone owns a business and they can prove that they got less of it after this ad, or maybe they can claim maybe they were let go, or something to that effect of there's a clear risk to their well-being and even ability to make money because of the false claim. And that's really a tall order to prove in court.
Now, other candidates have tried other avenues. In fact, there's a case involving the state's attorney general right now. How does that figure in?
Josh Stein is the attorney general, and in 2020 he ran an ad against his Republican opponent, claiming that his opponent, who was a district attorney at the time, and I'm paraphrasing, left rape kits on the shelf in an SBI lab or in a lab somewhere. I can't remember the exact details now, but the effect was, hey, it's his job to get these rape kits off the shelf, and he's not doing it. Well, the DA, Jim O'Neill, filed a complaint with the state elections board and cited a 90-year-old law. I don't know that it has a name, but it's a 90-year-old law that says candidates cannot circulate false information about each other in elections. It's easy to laugh at that law because we see so much of that. Candidates are constantly misrepresenting their opponents' views and stretching them as far as they possibly can. So in this particular case, the State Board of Elections investigated. Typically at the end of their investigations, they decide whether or not they're going to ask the local DA to pursue charges. In this case, they did not. They did not request the local DA to pursue charges, but the Wake County District Attorney's Office, which is headed by Lauren Freeman, decided to take up the case anyway and investigate Josh Stein, and that obviously that was a huge deal, especially in the Raleigh legal community, because A, Josh Stein is the current attorney general. He's the top prosecutor in the state. And B, Lauren Freeman, who runs that office and has recused herself, I should say, but she's a Democrat too. And so, there's a New York Times columnist who wrote about this and sort of wondered aloud, how did we get here? Why is the Wake County DA doing this? And so going back to our story, people might wonder, why don't more people do this? Well, it's because the elections board told us this particular law that was being at the center of that Stein case has never been used before to bring charges. No one has ever been prosecuted through that law, to their knowledge. So that's rare. It's untested in the courts. We don't know if the Wake DA, if she does bring charges, or if her office does, if they'll stick even. I think it was a federal appeals court put the case on hold recently because of the implications on Stein's First Amendment right.
We'll be back after the break. When we come back, we'll talk about what some lawmakers want to do to add more accountability to political ads, and we'll discuss the special role Paul Specht plays in WRAL's political coverage. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. We're talking with WRAL state government reporter Paul Specht about how political ads are evolving this election cycle. Paul, some lawmakers they're sick of all this ad trickery, and some of them want to make some changes, right?
That's right. Ricky Hurtado is one Democratic legislator who was pictured in those defund the police T-shirts, and he spoke with us about just what it felt like to see that, and even suggested, hey, why don't we amend our laws so that we can even prosecute or outlaw the practice of trying to trick people of, in his words, he called it fabricating reality. I don't know what those statutes might look like. I'm not a lawyer. It seems like it would be difficult to prosecute people for that because there's so much out there that is distorted, but that's something that he suggested. And then, when these ads sort of went viral in our own little political community here in North Carolina, other people were definitely outraged by it. And I should take a minute. This is not a one-sided thing. This is happening on both sides. There's a Republican candidate too, who had his photo superimposed in front of a police lineup wall to make it look like he was arrested when he was not. He faced a criminal charge years ago. That case was dismissed, but in that particular digital ad, it certainly appears as if he was arrested, which he never was, and people who see it might be none the wiser. So that's my disclaimer. This is happening on both sides, and it would be interesting to see how any suggested law might fare in the General Assembly.
Are there any defamation cases related to political ads that have succeeded in the state?
I asked some local attorneys that same question, people who have worked on cases in the political community for years, and they cited one involving our governor, Roy Cooper. Back in the year 2000, he was running for attorney general, and he ran an ad against his Republican opponent. I believe it was Dan Boyce, and Boyce was a lawyer. Obviously, he's running for attorney general, and the Cooper campaign ad accused Boyce's law firm of overcharging taxpayers in a class action lawsuit to the tune of, I believe it was $28,000 per hour is what they accused Boyce of charging. Well, think about it. If you're Boyce and that ad's out there, A, it looks like you're ripping off taxpayers, and B, you look elitist, and C, people might wonder, oh, should I even go to this guy for legal services? I can't afford him. So obviously, he could argue that made he had damages from that ad, and he did argue that, and it worked its way through the courts for 14 years before there was a settlement in 2014. Cooper ultimately issued an apology and had to pay about $75,000. I believe most of that was legal fees. But that is the most a successful case that local attorneys cited to me.
Paul, you have a unique role here. You're WRAL's misinformation specialist. Tell us about that.
Right. I'm not just a state government reporter. I'm also the PolitiFact reporter. And what that means is I'm a correspondent for PolitiFact, which is a national nonprofit fact-checking organization. And they have a very specific way of reporting on things and fact-checking claims. PolitiFact's been around for 15 years now, I think, and is one of the most successful fact-checking organizations in the country. People might know them best for the Truthometer, which we rate claims from true to true, mostly true, half true, mostly false, and then pants on fire, which is obviously everyone's favorite. And we have a segment 3 times a week at least, where we'll either run a fact check that I write, or we will talk about a national fact check, because we team up with our PolitiFact reporters in Tampa, where they're based, and some in Washington, D.C. And so if you watch WRAL, you might see a segment of me fact-checking a candidate in our races, or me fact-checking Joe Biden, or me fact-checking a Republican senator or something like that. We try to address things people are seeing here and might be hearing about in North Carolina as it relates to local issues, as well as claims they might be seeing on cable news, or just talking about based off of something they saw in a social media rumor. Those are things we try to address in the segment.
And there's a whole method to that fact checking.
That's right. We have we always reach out to the person who makes the claim, but then we have 4 different steps. I can't recite them off the top of my head, but we always use official, credible sources, and then the ratings are voted on by 3 editors. And so, and the idea behind all that is consistency and fairness, so that everyone goes through the same process. And so that's the idea.
So as an expert in this area, what advice do you have for listeners, for viewers? How can they cut through the noise of these political ads, especially kind of as we walk up to the November 8th election? How can they put on their own Truthometer hat?
I wish there was a Truthometer hat so that you could just cut through the misleading claims in any ad. But as we know, there are too many of them. So if there is one ad or one claim or one issue that you care about as a voter, what I would do is Google it. I would Google that issue. Did so-and-so say this? Did so-and-so vote this way? I would see if other fact checks have come up, either by PolitiFact, by factcheck.org. The Washington Post has a fact checker. The New York Times does its own fact checking. And then there's a good website, Snopes.com, we trust their fact checks as well. We try to promote each other's work in the fact checking industry. But I would do that, or I would read credible sources, and oftentimes that's mainstream media. And I know that mainstream media doesn't have the best reputation in some circles, but it is the most reliable because we aren't funded by one party or another. There's no agenda. The editorial board is separate from the newsroom, and all those places I mentioned, or they don't have an editorial board at all. PolitiFact does not have an editorial board. We don't take any stances on anything. So I would do that. And then if there's a mailer or a television ad that I find of interest, I would look for those small letters under each claim, because these political groups and the candidates are required to cite their sources. And oftentimes it's very discreet. They'll make this big claim with big scary letters, and at the very in the corner of the screen there might be a citation of bill number 538 from 2012 or whatever. I would see if I could look that up. What was the bill in 2012 that they're referencing, and then how did that politician vote on it, and was that bill about that issue that I saw in the television ad, or was it bigger than that? Were there more things to consider? Those are the things I would do.
Well, Paul, thank you for what you do. It's a great service to our listeners, viewers, and readers.
Thanks for having me.
That's WRAL state government and PolitiFact reporter Paul Specht. For Paul's latest story on political ads and for his work on PolitiFact, visit WRAL.com. Thanks for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and for making us part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email waiting for you in your inbox every morning with Triangle news, events, and headlines to get you ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.